Hello and welcome everyone to episode number 59 at the Indie Football Podcast. And this one was a long time coming for us. This week we have Akshata Shukla joining us, who has been doing a lot of significant work in the Indian sports industry. Thank you for taking the time out and joining us, Akshata. How are you doing tonight?
Thank you, Dwathan. Thank you, Anukash. Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well. I hope you guys are also doing well.
Yeah, I mean, I will ask Anukar sir, for how long Anukar sir has been trying to, get in touch with Akshata. We tried to text messages. And after the
I'm really
sports
sorry.
last week in Delhi, I mean, no, we completely understand. Anukar sir, to finally have Akshata at a podcast almost seems like a dream come true, right?
With all due respect, I have never worked for even wooing a girl in my life ever before. Like I have done for getting Akshata on the podcast. It has been that difficult. I remember sending LinkedIn
I'm really
messages to
sorry.
people who were in
I'm really,
SportsKhabri, Instagram. But
I'm
I mean,
really sorry.
no, you don't need to apologize. I think sometimes the good things in life take time, and that happened with Manas also when he came like around 5 6 months back, and this happened with you also, and it's a good thing. And honestly, like one of the biggest reasons I had been really looking forward to this, and I don't think I've really shared with Doi also about it, is that like I have two elder sisters. One of them has her own company. She founded it around 12 years back. It's called Share a Doorstep. So I was discussing you with her some time back, and like she was saying this to me some time back that even though like my life would seem a bit easier for you, like running a company which is working well, having said that, for a woman entrepreneur, it's not that easy relatively because there are a lot of other things, there are a lot of stereotypes, but to get through them, it's a big thing. And Akshata, what I want to say is that usually I say that I'm very happy to have a guest and all, but I have a lot of respect for you, and so I want to warmly welcome you to the Indie Football Podcast. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, guys. I'm really overwhelmed. Thank you. I'm not really used to listening to such nice things about myself.
You know,
So very overwhelmed. Thank you.
even though I am here, I am the person here directly in a sports industry, but Anukar sir here has constantly told me so much about, Akshata Shukla. She's the perfect person for us to bring on our podcast. So we're just happy that they could finally arrive. Akshata, please tell us more about your work in building Sports Khabri. I know you have done many other things as well. I'm going to ask you about that too. But tell us more about the genesis of Sports Khabri and also some interesting football stories that you may have.
So Sports Khabri is turning 3 in
Yeah, in
September.
September.
Yeah. So we started during the COVID. Before that, Ratul is the other partner in Sports Khabri. So Ratul and I were working together in a fantasy sports platform called Apne 11. But unfortunately, because of COVID, there were no matches happening, and it was also a startup at the time. So we had to shut shop. I was working as the digital media manager there. And
Okay.
after a couple of months, we were like, we let's start something different. At that time, Ratan was my boss, and he, but we had built that kind of a good, bond where we
Rap.
thought that we can, yeah, come together and work on a project. So that's how we thought of starting Sports Khabri. It was actually also a blog that I was running on the side because I was always very fascinated about sports and advertisements, and I could always see that if you want to know what all brands is a particular athlete or a club associated with, there's no platform where you could find all the details. So at that time, if you wanted to know what all brands is Federer associated with, you had to go to 10 different press releases, find that data out. Eventually, of course, all of their websites started putting out that information, but past deals were still not there.
Right.
And even now, only this information is only available for a few clubs, a few athletes. Um, so we started to build that data, and that's still our niche, which is sponsorships and endorsements. We do, of course, cover regular sports news also, but we have to limit ourselves more towards endorsements and most more longer shelf life content, because we are a small team and we still do not have the kind of bandwidth to compete with bigger giants who are out there. So that's the kind of content we are doing. Last year, after there was this very unfortunate incident in the under 17 women's football team where one of the one of the staff members was
Yes.
sort of accused
Actually,
of yeah,
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 absolutely.
yeah, for legal reasons. I won't take the name or anything of that
Yeah.
sort. But that kind of really shook me, and that kind of made me realize that there's so much that we do not really talk about when it comes to Indian football, Indian women's football. So that's when we also started to pick up topics around Indian football. And
Absolutely.
like on our website, we still stick to the sponsorships and endorsements bit, but on our YouTube channel, we are doing a lot of podcasts that are covering important topics on Indian football. Like as we talk right now, there's a live going on the OCIs and the PIOs matter. So, so we are trying to do as much as we can on Indian football. Yeah, that's basically how it all began.
Interesting that you say this because Anukash sir will remember Akshata. We had Manisha Kalyan with us like 6 months ago, last end part of last year, where she did come and speak to us about her entire journey being an Indian football player, and it's just nice to see that there is an upward curve towards where the Indian football awareness is going on, even though we are probably far behind from other sports like cricket, which in my
Mhm.
opinion should not be a benchmark, because I after doing this entire sports management course, and I keep reading books here and there around sports, that every sports and every sports journey has its own way of developing. And I'm sure Indian football, even though it might take longer than what it has taken other sports to reach a certain way, but I feel there is a bright future ahead. And Anukar sir, do you remember that Manisha Kalyan episode? It really did teach us a lot, and we resonate, hence whatever Akshata just shared makes more sense to us, right?
Definitely, man. I mean, I think what I really loved about that episode was with the humility, Manisha spoke, and even like not just her. I remember like usually whenever we put out Instagram posts, we do a collaborator thing with our guests, and even all of her siblings and all, they still like our posts. They still ask us, and you kind of see that bond. And I mean, like we have done quite a lot of podcasts so far, and but the best part has been that people, that human portion that we have done. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's stories like that we also are trying with our podcast to connect. One of it is of course yours, which is truly inspirational to us, and I have reiterated that because honestly, those are like, though he often stresses about the why of our podcast, based on Simon Sinek's Start with Why. I he loves that book. Which is of course to bring about that change in Indian football. And trust me, like whenever we see Indian football doing well, or like maybe getting into the top 100, or even the women's game for that matter, like as part of my due diligence of following you on Twitter and all, I have seen that you have also been very active with the Women's World Cup. And it's not just you, like other people also. People are starting to watch the women's game more than they were, say, 4 or 5 years back. And it's a good transition. It's a very solid sort of a transition that, I mean, I'm not disrespecting cricket or other sports, but honestly, football has its things. And for me, who was a Liverpool fan since I was 7 years old, I've been watching Liverpool for the last 16 years. But to be very honest, if I see a Sunil Chhetri goal, or if I see Indian football doing well, or to say in some other sport also, if I see a Sachin Tendulkar scoring a six or a four, it of course resonates a different sort of an emotion for me. And
Yeah.
seeing Indian football is something that we had wanted to see do well. And of course, like seeing it as it is definitely a step in the right direction, I guess.
Yeah, and Akshata, I just wanted to say, even though Anukarsh has briefly introduced us to the topic of Liverpool and how both of you are Liverpool fans, I'm going to come to that pretty soon. But before we jump over to that part, I'm just curious to ask you more about the endorsements and sponsorships part that you mentioned,
Yeah.
because currently, in the last 12 months here in Mumbai, I have been told time and again that money in the sports industry is quite the crunch, because everyone is just handling, working in a tight budget. So how does your experience of doing this endorsement sponsorships part learned, what lessons has it taught you, and what does it tell you about the future next 3 4 years in India specifically?
I think there's huge potential. Unfortunately, cricket takes up a lot of sponsorships, endorsements. We see the kind of
Hmm.
broadcast rights, the
Yeah.
amount that is spent on them, the kind of advertisement packages that the broadcasters create. It's crazy the kind of money that brands spend on just small tiny appearances during these games, right?
Yeah.
In
Absolutely.
cricket. Um, and I think what brands and what people are failing to understand is that other sports, I can speak more about Indian football here, is that they are, of course, also, on the upward trajectory.
Yeah.
Right.
Fans are showing a lot of loyalty towards the sport, right? And
Hmm.
let's be honest, a sponsorship deal in football and cricket will, amount wise, be much cheaper in football, and
Hmm.
you'll
Yeah.
get massive loyalty from your fans. If you look at India right now, there are ISL teams that are enjoying crazy fandom, that are enjoying loyal fandom.
Hmm.
People, the stadiums are full now. People are
Yeah.
talking about it on social media. Athletes have good, decent following now organically, but we are not
Yes.
making use of it, right? If you look at Indian football team, the national team right now, both men and women, there are players who don't have boot sponsorship. That's the basic thing that happens in football,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And this is sort of the case with other sports as well. Go to tennis, there are hardly any sponsorships in tennis when a person is starting to get into the career of professional
Yeah.
tennis,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
other sports
Until
also for that matter. Yeah.
true.
And there is huge potential because if you want to tap on a loyal fan base at a cheaper amount, please look at other sports. And I also feel that somewhere down the line, cricket is also going to touch that point from where it will be difficult for it to keep going up, and
Hmm.
we can
Yeah.
already see that. Like we,
Yeah.
unfortunately, if you look at the things that the BCCI does, or how cricket is planned in India, if there's a match, you still have to, you can easily use an online ticket. But of course, this is not a BCCI thing. There are authorities involved because of which this
Yeah.
happens. But basically to get a ticket, or if, for instance, I sign an endorsement deal with Virat Kohli, he endorses 20, 25 other brands. How will a
Yeah.
brand get that kind of space from him? Of course, like if he endorses something, the,
It's
the
big.
result
Yeah.
will be massive, right? But it is also a struggle for brands to find the time from their busy schedule to, get the kind of campaigns that they want to design around the athlete. So it's not just about, कि हाँ चलो एक बंदे को पकड़ लिया and it's done, or एक team को
Yeah.
पकड़ लिया,
Hmm.
it's done. We cannot be doing
Right.
that, and I think unfortunately that is also where people go wrong, because they just think that हमने sponsorship deal sign कर ली, बाकी club के हाथ में. No, you have
Yeah.
to sit with the club and you have to put in that energy and time and effort with them. That let's see how we will package it. Fine, the
Yeah.
brand will see my name in the stadium, but what will the customer see my brand's name in the stadium? But when they go back to their house, what is it that they're taking with them, and how is it that I'm targeting them again? Right. So there
Absolutely.
is huge potential, but I think that unfortunately they are not getting the guidance that can maybe take them forward.
Definitely. I
Interesting.
mean, what does this remind me of is in one of our sponsorship classes, which was taught to us by Vivek Sethia only. He mentioned how various IPL brands, they lack a second layer of communication to their target audience. Like for
Hmm.
example, just to mention, Mumbai Indians had a brand called Slice in their front jersey earlier this year in the IPL. Most half of the people thought it was the it was the drink that we have, the juice that we have, Slice, but it was actually a bank, it was actually a finance company which was there, but nobody knew it. And interestingly, you mentioned this is because about in cricket we would very rarely see that brands continue sponsoring certain teams year after year, because they do understand that their ROI is not worth it. So, of course, these are great points for us as sports management professionals, and of course, you who has already done so much work to ponder upon. But now let's talk about Liverpool. I mean, this is the best part
Yeah.
for what Anukar sir is here for. But honestly, we are just trying to incorporate different parts into our podcast to add more variety and diversity. So it just helps that we speak about various kinds of things. Akshata, you mentioned that you are a fan for 3 years, which is interesting, and it got me thinking because Anukar sir here is a Liverpool fan because of the Steven Gerrard era and so many different
Hmm.
things that happened when he was a 7-year-old. Talk us through your journey as a Liverpool fan. How did the fandom arise, and what's the reason behind all this massive Liverpool support?
So growing up, I used to not really watch football, and I do not come from a family that watches a lot of football or other sports for that matter. The only sport that I used to watch was tennis actively.
Oh,
Cricket because her Indian household cricket देखता है, but tennis was the only one that I knew of, right? But because
right.
after we started Sports Khabri, I wanted to know about other sports. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's when I started to watch football, and I don't know. I mean, I think there's something, and I do genuinely believe that you cannot really choose which athlete you will follow
Absolutely.
or which club you'll
Absolutely.
follow. It just comes to you, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So
It does. No matter how much it hurts you.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and people tell me that you started following Liverpool because they had an amazing season, but last season was not amazing, na. अगर इतना ही बुरा होता तो
Yeah.
मैं change कर लेती. I would have started following
Absolutely.
Manchester City, or I would have.
Absolutely.
And even
Yeah.
if I did, for instance, even if I did follow Liverpool because they had an amazing season, isn't that one of the reasons why most people follow football club? Like all the people who started following United back in the day also
Right.
followed because of their glory days, right?
Hmm.
So
Yes.
anyway,
Absolutely.
that's not the reason why I follow Liverpool. But yeah, I mean, I am from the Salah, Mane, Klopp era, and
You have been there with the best. Thankfully, you didn't have to go through the years where we are not qualified for Champions League for a lot of time. But yeah, I have one
even
thing
last
to
season.
ask you. And yeah, one thing I do want to ask you. So we know like the Caicedo, that Caicedo and Lavia have chosen Chelsea for different reasons. And I would like to tell our guests that other podcasts were trying to agree personal terms with Akshata before this podcast, but this time we did not get pipped.
A long story, but I'll tell you in brief. Like, okay, I and Anukar sir met at a dental college. He was 1 year elder to me. He was my senior, and he
Uh,
also took a couple of ragging sessions. But then I
Wait
I
a
just
did
second, you
not.
were also
I didn't
dental
know.
back then.
I am a
no, I'm
dentist. He left it in between. He wanted to pursue his sports. I
yes, I
completed my degree some time back. Yeah.
So honestly, even I started following football during the COVID time because I just felt too deprived of any sports. And if you remember, Premier League, La Liga was the first sports to resume in like June, July of 2020. That was the same time when even I started following football. And for some weird reason, I just love numbers around football, numbers around sports in general. So for 1 year, I just used to tweet random stuff, put on my Instagram stories, and then Anukar sir told me that you keep putting up these stories. Let's start a football podcast. And I said, no, I don't follow football much. But then he said, let's do it nevertheless. And then here we are. So I and your journey of following football in terms of the time span
Yeah.
is just very very similar. But I know Liverpool as a club that does a lot for its fans. Earlier this year in my course itself, we were studying about how clubs build that affinity, for the fans to come and support them year after year. And Liverpool Football Club really goes one step beyond in providing for the community. They had this different wheelchair stand so that physically handicapped, especially abled people would be able to come and see that. So even though I'm not a Liverpool fan, but I do resonate why people from all around the globe are Liverpool fans for different reasons. You are because Sadio Mane, Klopp region, and Anukar sir could probably go on for hours and hours to speak about Liverpool, but it's just
Yeah.
interesting to see that. So tell me, and interestingly, tell us a bit more about the sports meet and greet thing that you are organizing. How did the idea come about? And it was great for us to visit and be a part of it. But then, what are the plans around it? How did it start? And where do you see it going? And how do you see it helping the community, as Vivek sir mentioned briefly during that sports event?
Yeah, so the first sports meet and greet that we did was, I think, immediately after the lockdown opened up. Um,
Okay.
we had built up a small community on Clubhouse back in the day. That's how I
Acha,
also,
right.
yeah, that's how I also know Vivek. So every day, Euros were on at that time. So every day,
Yeah.
all of us used to watch all the matches together. Ball, बॉल अपडेट्स वर देयर, कुछ लोग हॉटस्टार पे देख रहे थे, कुछ लोग टीवी पे देख रहे होते थे, तो उनके
Right.
पास पहले अपडेट आ जाती थी हॉटस्टार वालों के पास बात, so like good healthy happy banter, and we kind of developed good bonds, and we all thought that like once the lockdown gets lifted, we'll try to meet. So that's when we met for the first time. Uske baad, it just kept happening. It was just an excuse for all of us to meet, and then we realized that people were reaching out to us and asking us when will the next sports and meet and greet will be, right? So we just wanted to, and we also sense that there is an absence of that community here, right? Like people, it's very difficult for people to reach out to others. For instance, like you guys wanted to meet secretly, but it couldn't work out, right? But that day, because we met, it was easier to
Right. Right.
and what we met on Saturday evening, and today is
Yes.
Wednesday, and we're recording the
Wednesday.
podcast.
Wednesday. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so yeah, so meeting someone in person actually kind of helps you, get to know them better, their work better. So it's just an excuse for people to come together and help each other in whatever way they can, and explore more opportunities.
Yeah. Anuka sir, you were saying.
Yeah, funny story. Because I really wanted to be at this meet and greet. Like, I think 3 weeks back, you had tweeted about this
Yeah.
meet and greet thingy. And that time I told Doi about it, and I was very excited about it. So what happened was that usually when I go, I either take a cab or I take a bus, whatever I find first from my college to Noida or Delhi. So what happened that day was the driver, he forgot the way. And because I really wanted to be at event, here I am in middle of some freaking village with my GPS on, telling him, "Bhaiya, आगे जाओ, भैया right जाओ, भैया सीधे जाओ," telling a bus driver to do all those things. And I think it was around 8 p.m. when I texted Doi that, man, I won't be able to make it. It won't be possible. He was very disappointed. I could like uh, see the concern in his voice, but I understood that he did understand my reasons. But I was like, come on, man, one life, we are gonna make this. I just booked the cab straight away. I was like, let's go, let's see how far we can reach. I reached right on time, and it was like one hell of a story. So I think with these events, there are always these little anecdotes that people will have attached to it, and like
Yeah,
I'll always remember you with the podcast and also with that episode, because if there wasn't that meet and greet, I wouldn't have pushed myself so much to come to that.
huh. And I think the when you as if you meet someone in person, both week and like you spend some time with them, it just like stays with you for a longer period of time, right? Like a phone
Yeah.
Absolutely.
conversation or a LinkedIn interaction, it just skips your mind. And I'm really blessed that Vivek was also equally involved in this, and Vivek was also like कि हाँ करते हैं, right? So the synergies matched, the कि
Yeah.
करना है,
Right.
like so that's how we have been able to do it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and now as we approach towards the final parts of this episode, I do want to ask you a couple of things. On your LinkedIn, I did watch something that you did with Red FM 93.5. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So Red FM, I got a campus placement. I was in IMC, Indian Institute of Mass Communication. So
Okay.
that's
Okay.
where I took my journalism from, and I got a campus placement at Red FM. Yeah, I was working with the digital team. I worked there for like good 9, 10 months, I think. But
Yeah.
I always wanted to do something of my own. And going to office every day in the morning and coming back was not something but for me. It's still not something for me. So even now,
Yeah.
like SportsKhabri is remote working, सबको, and like, and I'm so glad that my team also understands this, and we all like kind of connect with this, that some everybody is comfortable that way, right? Like people work at different hours. Somebody likes to work at night, somebody likes to work in the morning. Of course, they are
Yeah.
available during the day to take up calls or if something important comes up. But I think we understand that we all need our space to function. So
Yes.
that's what I was not getting at Red FM. Or in fact, before that also I worked with one of the, like one of the financial companies, and
Yes.
I realized that I cannot just, I just can't.
Yeah. I mean,
It's not.
it's just helpful for us when people like you organize these sports meet and greet events also, because honestly, with the two of us, Anukarsh and I, the dreams and ambitions that we have for the podcast is just helps when we go to when we go to events like these and speak to people,
Absolutely.
and there's just so much there to learn. And we completely resonate with the fact that even though Anukarsh sir is a dentist, he will probably he's got his future set when it comes to financial backing and everything. But people like me, I went into the sports industry head on. I was thinking like, okay, we'll see whatever money comes in, but then let's do something that we absolutely love in it. The fact that it's a niche industry probably frightens few people that I have in the sports industry, but I look at it as an opportunity because it's for people like us to make something of our own. So, like for example, we probably would have asked you this off the record, but since you have so much experience around it, and if we and we do have dreams of starting our own website in the Indie Football Podcast website. So, what do you think? What kind of football websites are truly useful and probably contributes positively to the Indian sports industry now that you are running this for 3 years?
See, but we also have to consider one very important thing, that when we are building a website, we also have to make sure that the content is such that it is ranked on Google, right?
Yeah,
Because there is massive competition. If you write something on maybe Liverpool for that matter, it's
yeah,
not going to easily rank on Google, right? It's not going to be on the first 10 pages also, because you're
yeah,
competing with the giants of content platforms, right?
absolutely.
So the one thing that happened, the one good thing that happened with us was that we could identify the niche right in the beginning, right? So we do
Yeah,
not have to struggle. We did not have to struggle for views as much as other people had to. And every time you have to work on your SEO or other things, it comes with money, right? A
yes,
lot of cost is associated to it to kind of get traffic on
correct.
certain keywords,
Right.
right? So always aim for organic growth. I think that is something that lasts longer also. Like Sports Khabri is
Yes,
one thing that I'm really proud of Sports Khabri is that even if we stop doing our SEO for the next we don't do any SEO, but even if we stop putting content for the next 6 months or 1 year, we will still get traffic,
yeah,
Nice.
right? So
Interesting.
build that content in a way that you're thinking long term perspective. So
yeah,
divide it in such a way that you're thinking, you're creating content which is which has longer shelf life also, which has a shorter shelf life as well, because of course that is your day to day update. People will get to know that ये रोज का वो चीजें करते हैं. Identify your niche. That is very important, right? Like
yeah,
for instance, right now Indian football is still in the develop, like not a lot of people are still writing about it, especially Indian women's football for that matter. So if you pick up as
Hmm.
that as niche, write on it, you'll start ranking on Google thoda aur pehle, right? Twitter pe
yeah,
it will be easier for you to get that kind of connect with the audience. and
Makes
true.
and
sense.
and thankfully, like, the community is so amazing. The Indian football community, they are always happy to help. So even if you
Hmm.
don't know anything, just put it out there that this is what I want to know, and people will be very happy to help. I think this is one thing that I'm really, and it kind of really pains my heart also, that people are not really identifying or seeing the loyalty the fans have here and the knowledge that the fans possess. Sometimes, like, if you're on a podcast, you'll be surprised to see the kind of knowledge that the fans have, the kind of statistical awareness of the sport they have, of the clubs they have, right?
Yeah,
Both men's and women's football. So,
yeah,
just identify the niche, identify the sport that you want to cover. We've just mostly spoken about football, but there are other sports also that are lacking the Desi Indian content, right? NBA is lacking that, NFL is lacking that. Hockey people are writing about now, right? But they have been,
Right.
but there's still scope in hockey also if you see the Twitter trends, at
yeah,
least on my timeline. Tennis
absolutely.
also, not a lot of platforms are doing that. So yeah, just identify the sport, identify the niche, be loyal to it, and also don't give up that easily, because building
Yeah,
a website and seeing results on it is very, even a YouTube channel for that matter, right? You
yeah,
don't know which video will click. You don't know
yeah,
which video will get you the views, or which article will get you, you know, get you that goodwill in front of Google's eyes. I always think that, we have to develop that kind of credibility in front of Google, be it your website or be it your YouTube channel. So just
Yeah,
at it.
absolutely.
Don't think कि हाँ 6 महीने में हो जाएगा या साल भर में हो जाएगा. And follow your passion. If you're passionate about it, then it will happen
Yeah,
organically, right? कि
absolutely.
जबरदस्ती
And
नहीं है, right? कि हाँ
You know,
करना है. मैं भी नहीं करती कभी कभी. मेरे को नहीं मन कर रहा, मैं नहीं कर रही. ठीक है, नहीं कर रही. कोई बात नहीं. But जब आप करो तो मन
you
से
know,
करो, right?
absolutely. For someone who hasn't really been in the sports industry, like when it comes to first-hand knowledge, these meet and greet events, when I get to meet people through Doipan or like generally, is the only way I get to, see the sports industry or through the podcasts. But every time there's an episode, I get to learn something new. And I think in this episode also, because like there were a lot of things which I can resonate with, because I myself hate waking up early. So like there are a lot of times when I'll wake up around 10 or 11 and I'll see Doipan has already messaged a good morning guys, what are you doing today on the group? So like it kind of goes hand in hand, and like I think that's how we as a like me and Doi, we complement each other on the podcast. Like he hates tech, he hates anything related to tech. He'll be like, sir aap karo, mujhe nahi pata. So I think those are things that you learn with time, that human connection. And as you said, the footballing community is very very nice, like overall, like because like being in the healthcare industry myself, I know it's very much like dealing with patients, getting the job done, getting them treated, getting the results, but that is it. There's a not much of a human side involved there. But in the sports industry there is, and it's people like you who make us want to actually create that content to push ourselves a lot more. And as we move towards the end of this podcast, as we meander towards it, I really want to thank you for coming here, and just to tell you that the wait was actually worth it. And honestly, like if possible, like Doi has been really after me for doing a business or sports segment, but if you could take out time, say once in 2 weeks or somewhere around that, we would love to do that. And I am sure Doi would be, chomping at the bit to do something like that. If that would be
yeah,
possible on YouTube or something.
I mean, time ka I cannot say, but like whenever I'm
yes,
available, I can of course, we can
That
of
would be
definitely.
course
very
meet
kind
that
of
up.
you.
Yeah.
The details of which we can discuss later. But just in case you thought you are done, you're not. One last question, because I thought very relevant. We had Samra Hunter, who was one of the FIFA World Cup anchors
Yeah,
for
I
us.
follow her on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So we, as we said, we had Manisha Kalyan as well, and a couple of others who are working in football. And I did notice that you also try to put some emphasis in your work around women in sports. So we wanted, lastly, before we let you go, how do you think is the future of women in sports in India? Because currently, I'll be honest, I don't think there are a very strong women fraternity in the sports industry right now. Because if you see my class of sports management, 30 students, there's only one female. And overall, even though I do notice people, women passionate about sports a lot, but they still meander towards other career options. So in your experience, how do you think this would change, or just your general opinions around women working in sports in India?
Like sometimes I talk to certain people and they say कि नहीं नहीं काफी लड़कियां हैं in the sports industry now,
Yeah.
have come up, but unfortunately I don't see a lot of them still. Like you only mentioned that there, in a batch of 30 there's just one girl, right?
Yes.
So there is of course still a lot of difference. In that sports meet that we had the other day, there were two
Yeah.
girls, and this, and in the previous sports meets also we have seen that there are 3-4 women who always come, and there are not, the numbers are still very less, especially in the leadership roles. But there are organizations that are kind of trying to make sure that there is more of women participation. But उसमें भी अब एक issue ये आ जाता है कि you don't you don't find the people, like like from an entrepreneur's perspective I can tell you this, that there, like, if I want to bring in a woman writer, I also have
Yes.
to, and we have had some, you know some brilliant writers in the past who didn't have that kind of knowledge of sports. But like they were such quick learners,
Yeah.
and they could just learn on the job, and they were ready to give it their all. But
Hmm.
they unfortunately, because fortunately for them, they had to pursue different careers, so they moved on to other aspects of their careers. But like from an entrepreneurship perspective, I feel that to find that talent for you with your limited resources also becomes challenging, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
this is
Absolutely.
something that, yeah, this is something that kind of gives you that you want to maybe sometimes associate with a woman who's working in sports, but you can't afford to. But
Definitely.
as the numbers rise, this particular challenge will actually go away, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, and so, and from the other perspective, as you've already spoken with Manisha, there are also other girls from women from our football team that are doing exceptionally well. That are that have traveled to other countries, playing for some big clubs, taking that experience, also encouraging other girls. Jyoti Chauhan is doing
Yeah.
some massive work, right? And because of her performance, it has opened doors for other women out there, right? Of
Absolutely.
course, there are days when you just feel really demotivated that nothing is gonna happen. ऐसे बस चल रहा है. But what I will ask people to do is just focus on the good that is happening. There is a lot
Yeah.
of good that is happening. A lot of women are trying to make some change in their own way. Focus on
Yeah.
that. Do not get carried away with the negativity that's out there. And I think just by focusing on the good that's out there, we can maybe multiply it and make sure that women in sports continue to excel. And please help each other in whatever
Yeah.
possible way you can. Just
Absolutely.
help each other in whatever possible way you can.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to summarize this entire episode,
Totally.
where Anukar sir already mentioned of how grateful we are for you to take out this time and share the valuable insights for not only us but also other people trying to start their own website and whatnot. We won't keep you any longer, Akshata. Thank you for taking out the time and being there for us till next week, where we are hopeful to find someone as value adding like Akshata. To all our listeners, thank you for listening. Take care. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.